I did want to say this before we start. Q&A is going to run throughout. I've always found that I have a really good question on the second slide, and then when it comes time for Q&A, I forgot what it was. So if you want to interrupt, don't worry. This is going to be very informal. This is about the information that I hope we're bringing to you that you can use. Future Business Index, we'll go to the next slide. It's a statewide survey. This year it was 400, or this 6 months it was 480 small to medium-sized businesses. You can see it's mixed mode. It was very random. All C level and above. So decision makers for the most part, but everything from General Motors to single sole proprietorship. But they are the people that make the decisions. This was commissioned by the Accident Fund and of course the Michigan Business Network. It's our survey. The Accident Fund said this is really worthwhile. We want it to get out there. It's good for business, and so they finance the endeavor. And then ROI Insight, Paul King, who couldn't be here today, is the guy who administers it for us and helps us interpret the data. And you can see that we were in the field from November 1st to December 3rd. So this is really, really recent. And you can see a very high degree of confidence. So, next slide. Here's a couple of the takeaways that you're going to get. So this is the format is like tell them what you want to tell them, then tell them what you told them. And that's what we're going to do here. But these are some of the takeaways you'll see from some of the graphs that come up. Economic satisfaction remains pretty high. People feel pretty good. Profits, sales and hiring slowed the past 6 months. That's the last 6 months. 50% of the survey is predictive. So it's what are you going to do in the next 6 months, which we have found very accurate in, as an indicator. Small business leaders remain very optimistic about things. Future sales profits holding steady as compared to a year ago. Hiring projections indicate a pullback. Now, in further anecdotal investigation, we find it's not necessarily that they've decided not to hire, it's that they can't hire. The people they want to hire are out there. And one of the things we have found, oh, sorry. Usually people want me to move in the corner. It is that the talent is not that available, right? And so one of the things that we found this year that's kind of new is that we're actually economically slowing because of the talent cycle, because we can't get the people that we need in the positions we need. New trade policies and tariffs for the first time we've seen are affecting people in this marketplace. Past 6 months, so we'll talk about what has been happening recently. Growth in wages and investments has increased since November. Growth in all other indicators has decreased, including hiring, sales, and profits. All indicators are obviously down since June. Wage growth up 2 points. So why is wage up? And one of the real worries right now is wage inflation. People are looking at their bottom lines and looking at shrinking profits, and a lot of it is wage inflation, and it's a protective measure. If you have a shortage of talent, you have to put more money in the people that you have so that you hang on to them, because everybody that you have in your organization that's good, I want to steal them. And so does everybody else. Investment growth is up 2 points. They're finding they have to be innovative. They have to move in some fashion, maybe R&D, maybe open another office. So they're putting money back in. Hiring down again, and we talked about that already. Sales growth down 9 points since fourth quarter of 18. So sales were actually down this past 6 months, and then profit growth down 6 points, which is kind of in keeping with what's happening there. Sales slow, so does profit. Okay. Trending the indicators, wage increases. So you can see what's happening here. And now it's just kind of ticked down because of what we said. People are not hiring, but they do have to be somewhat protective. So they still are giving wage increases the last 6 months, down 1 point. Not that big a differential. That's basically flat. Okay, hiring increases then. You can see it's kind of moving off again. We think that's more an availability thing than it actually is us not wanting to go out and hire more people. All right, past 6 months in sales, you can see that sales have been falling a little bit since November 18. And now we've got November 19 at 40. Again, this is the last 6 months comparatively, one year to year. Okay, next slide. Trending indicators, profit increases. You can see profits have been down a little bit as reported year to year over the last 3 years. A lot of that is the wage inflation, so part of the profit goes there, part of the profit goes to technology and a whole bunch of other things. Trending the indicators for capital investment. This is what comes in really, actually Jim alluded to this a lot. What happens when your company is not growing? From a profit standpoint, you got to find new ways to get into that market, to sell your goods, your services, et cetera. So you start investing in some case. And you can see investment's been up the last 3 years. 3 years. Satisfaction with the economy, however, everybody is pretty satisfied with the economy. They feel pretty good. You can see 82%, 8 out of 10 are either satisfied or somewhat satisfied. So that's a really good indicator because a lot of what happens in the next 6 months is really predicated on how you feel about the last 6 months and how enthused you are going forward. 18% say they're dissatisfied with the economy. That's up 4 points. So there are more people at the bottom that are dissatisfied by 4 points, but that's still not that relevant at this point. Satisfaction is strongest in West Michigan, 88%, Metro Detroit, 82%. That would be here. And then you can see that Flint, Saginaw, and Bay City, and the Upper Peninsula. Well, I got a round of applause when I presented this in Marquette to the chamber out there. They were really, oh, people below the bridge know us. Okay, next slide, if you would. Again, this is a graph. We throw these graphs in because there are visual learners, there are lingual learners and visual learners, and this kind of embeds a little better. You can see the dissatisfaction way below the satisfaction, but a little tick up here in November of 19, or June of 19. Greatest challenges to business. This is one of my favorite questions that we ask. And it really does. It's surprising because every 6 months it doesn't move too much. But if you look at the trending over 2 years, it really does move around. We've got a few things that are pretty new. Number one, you know, we do this like every 6 months. So the last 4 years, number one has been talent. It really has. And number two was retaining talent. That was the second biggest one. Right now, healthcare costs have entered in. And we'll talk about what they're planning on doing with that in just a few minutes. Finding customers, is there anybody in the business here that's not always a challenge? You know, I mean, we got to get more customers to grow. Retaining talent, see, has moved to 4 from number 2. Taxes. Taxes and government regulation have been in the top 10 since 1776, just for your notes. Poor infrastructure, roads. You can see this actually it does have an economic impact on businesses. And I work with a lot of economic developers, and we really have people who are trying to recruit to certain areas who say, you know, Alabama's offering me a pretty good prospect, and they have really smooth roads, right? So I don't have to redo my trucks every 3 days. And then the rest is wage inflation, retaining customers, access. Access to capital, 8, 9, 10, 11, even into 12, access to capital was the number one issue. Small businesses couldn't get loans. Now, in many cases, they didn't deserve those loans. They would have been bad loans. But in many cases, it was over-regulation in the banking industry. Okay. All right, the burden of rising health insurance costs. This is kind of interesting. You can see that a fair number of people don't offer health benefits to employees. And those that don't, there are alternatives. Obviously, we were chasing people to the exchange, giving them raises, having them go buy their own. But from a business ownership standpoint, you can see that we're just about flat with the decrease in healthcare benefits at the employer level. Increase in employee premiums, so participation on the basis of, you know, we're both going to absorb a little bit of the cost. And C, most of the business owners, well, the highest percentage of business owners, not most, 28% are going to just absorb that cost. Well, they're more conducive to absorbing the cost now because that's another way to retain people, right? Defense mechanism. And then I don't expect any healthcare cost increases. That's mostly a daydreaming circumstance. Okay. Top reasons for optimism. This is like, what are you looking? Oh, good.
That seemed, oh, thank you. There are 2 points that, on the first side, it seemed to me like a little contradiction.
Can you go back to, is it 2 slides?
Yeah, one, which showed at the first, yeah, the acquiring talent, that you said that that's an increasingly big issue, but at the same time, you showed a 10% increase in the issue of finding customers. So how does the problem of finding customers relate to not having enough talent to serve those customers?
Well, that's what I said is businesses always want to go get more customers. They always want to grow on that revenue. And then they'll say, well, we'll deal with that later. We'll have to go out and steal someone, or we'll overpay to bring in the talent, or we'll buy technology that'll supplement.
So it's more wishful thinking really than reality, because if you don't have the talent, you can't.
If you're in small business and you're not looking to grow, you need to get out of small business. I mean, frankly, it's like retailers. They're enthused every day. Doesn't matter if it's raining or sunny or whatever the case is. They're enthused about what's going on. And that's what this is reflective of. They're always moving forward. But the talent problem is keeping them from moving sometimes at the rate they want to move. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Okay. Well, after this, you're out of order.
Okay.
Okay, move up to, thank you. But this is a good example. Interrupt when you can so these questions don't slide by. Okay, top reasons for optimism. You can see growth and expansion. Again, it's that optimism factor. Why are we in business tomorrow? It's because we think we're going to do better. We know we're going to do better. They have great customers in their base. They feel that way, and they're very solid with those customers. I think it's less a price circumstance nowadays than it's ever been. Probably the quality and the inefficiency of moving to new suppliers sometimes costs money. They're, again, pretty optimistic about the economy. The demand for their products and services, they feel very good about what they're doing. And you can kind of run down the rest of the stuff. And even in spite of the way profits have been going, you can see that they're pretty enthused about their future profit sales, et cetera. Okay. Sales and profit projections. Now, this is a bit of a dilemma here because they're enthused about where they're going, but you can see their projections are a little different. Projected profit growth, 52%. That's pretty good. That's up from 49. Projected sales growth is up 2%, proportionate to. Expectations for decreased sales is way down to 7%. So they're feeling really good about tomorrow, about what they're going to sell and what they're selling. And you can see geographically, increased sales are highest in the Flint, Saginaw, and Bay City market. For those of you who have been following this kind of trending, anybody here from that market? That has been a struggle over the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years. And now that they're feeling enthused about that, that's a really good sign up there. I'm really pleased for them. Expectations for increased profits are highest in the UP and Northern Lower Peninsula. We actually didn't just put in the UP because we did this in Marquette. This is a real figure, okay? Expectations for sales growth, highest in retail. And I talked about the enthusiasm of retailers. That is always there. And also profit growth, highest in insurance and finance. Anybody aware of an insurance company who doesn't have a big building? Okay, there you go. All right, next slide. You can see now we put it in the graph form, projected profits. They're feeling pretty good about the next 6 months. This is looking at. So next slide. Okay, so this is projected sales over the next 6 months as well. Go to the next slide. Same thing, we're kind of reiterating. Okay, let's talk about talent demands for a second here. Hiring expectations are softening slightly, but still pretty strong. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We're all looking for people. We're all looking for talent. But at a certain point, you start saying, okay, let's buckle down. Let's bring in technology to bolster. Let's invest in our people. Let's keep what we have and go forward. Maybe we can grow on that basis. And so 38% say they plan to hire. That's down a little bit from 41. I think Jim will tell you that's really pretty much flat. Nearly 6 in 10 will maintain their staff at current levels, and that's up 4 points. So again, buckle down, stay with it. Hiring projections are highest in the Lansing market and the UP, and lowest in northern lower Michigan. So that's up in that, what's up there, Traverse City, and around to the right side, which is Alpena. Okay, manufacturing and construction sectors are most likely to be hiring, 46%. Anybody have a construction project going on? Unbelievable. Prices change every 3 months. You know, cost of labor goes up. They're fighting for people in that. That's an area that really slows when you don't have people. And so the prices keep going up in this thing. Followed by business and professional services. All right, projected hiring trends. Now we put it in a graph. Everybody take that quick snapshot. Anybody have any questions about any of that? All right. All right, now, filling open positions remains still pretty difficult. I mean, we can pound this to death, and I've been delivering this section of the speech now for 4 years, and it's been pretty consistent. Half are having difficulty filling jobs. 72% of those actively searching for talent are having difficulty. 57% attribute that difficulty to a lack of qualified applicants. And this is interesting, just to jump off the graph for a minute, because we had this conversation in the back about a half an hour ago, 45 minutes ago. And it was really, how is the education system matching up with the businesses? And I would say it was kind of a consensus in the room that if you're not, as a business, involved in your educational system, you need to get there because you're protecting your future. Get there involved in some capacity. There are organizations that put educators and business together so that they're training for future occupation, et cetera. Those types of things, it's incumbent upon us. This is our problem. We've got to go out and be a major part of fixing it. So get involved. 49% say positions remain open. 49%. 49% of the businesses have open positions they've been actively looking for. That'll slow growth. Okay. Wage growth projections. This, you saw, it was somewhere around 6 or 7. Wage inflation was becoming a concern. And again, a defense mechanism. Just over 4 in 10 plan to raise wages. Now remember that they projected sales and they projected profits up, but not proportionally. Part of that profit piece is being eaten up by the raises they're going to have to give to keep people, right? Or reward people, however, whatever perspective. Yeah.
46. Thank you. Did that 46% take into account the job descriptions are expanding, or is it just talk? Did it not consider that?
Yeah, you know, I guess we didn't get into the depth as much. Expound on that though, because that's a really good point.
Well, what we find when, right, we're in Automation Alley, right? So we're all
right.
talking about Industry 4.0, right?
Yeah.
So job descriptions, we're not seeing new job descriptions being added, right? It's not something new that's being added. It's job descriptions are expanding, right? So what used to be a CNC operator now has to be a CNC operator with, along with a robot programmer component, as well as a gear grinding, you know, that type of thing. Where before it was a CNC operator. Yeah,
well, that's where, you know, the slide before said qualified, you know. And the other thing is, I think realistically, as business owners, we have to realize we're not going to find that person who's going to come in and start making profits and be productive day 2. There's going to be some training involved, and you're going to see that we're going to invest in training. Their anticipation is to invest in training as well. Did I see another hand or not? Okay. Okay, wage growth projections. Projections for wage growth are strongest in Lansing and in the manufacturing and construction sectors. All right. I know many projects right now that are on hold over that exact issue. Okay, next slide. Again, wage projection increases and drop. You're seeing here graphically displayed, actually touching at a couple points there. All right, projected investments in growth. Now this is where you go next. If you can't get people, then you start saying, okay, how do we grow? How do we get things happening? 58% plan to invest in employee training. All right, so I have a son who's in the construction industry and he's now a vice president of a pretty major company. Why did he stay with that company? He said, they trained me to death. He was one of the first people to have LEED certification. He was one of the first people to have this, that, and the other thing. And they kept training him. And he said, by the time I get here, where they want me, I'm going to be ready for the presidency. Of course, he always said he was, by the time you train me, Dad, I'm going to be ready to be your father. So he had that perspective to begin with. A majority, 57%, will invest in advertising. Still kind of keep the brand up. We weren't specific in advertising. What does that mean? Because it's changing every 12 minutes here, with the internet. Just over 1/4 plan to invest in new equipment. Yeah. And I mentioned this to Jim because a lot of that, you saw a slide of his that said, the people are not getting the raises that are concurrent with the profit rise. And I think that part of that, what used to go to the wage earner, now goes to the technology that supports that wage earner. So the total amount of dollars are being spent on that position. It's just not in take-home pay. Just over 1/4, okay, plan to invest. 1/3, plan to add new product line or service. How about that perspective? 1/3 of the businesses are planning to expand in either service or in some capacity, a new offering. Impact of federal policy on growth. Well, I told you this was all pretty relevant, right? So you can see, for the first time, tariffs and trade policy having a negative effect on business, right? Tax cuts and Jobs Acts, you can see it had an effect. Jim, I would have liked to have gotten your perspective on this because I think it impacted the wage earner and the people who voted for the tax in cuts, probably a dime a year or something. It wasn't much of an impetus. Immigration policy is hurting. We've got to do, I'm going to get on a stump here for just a second. We don't have enough people coming into the workforce to replace the people leaving the workforce. We just don't. We've got to look at immigration with a little more logical perspective. There are people who want to come here that we're not letting in who can do what we want done. Okay. Sorry for that. All right, here's the conclusions over the whole thing. Satisfaction with the economy remains very strong, and this is really important. It's kind of like the retailer who says, how do you feel about the next 6 months? Well, I feel really good. I think things are going to really keep going on the same trend. Well, what are you going to do for that? Well, I'm going to order more inventory. I'm going to try to put a person on. We're going to stay open longer hours, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this economic rollover that comes with the enthusiasm. And that's why we do this, is for the future business, the future projections, because you can really make your own reality very quickly. Healthcare insurance costs are, again, a top challenge for doing business in Michigan. We got to figure something out here, folks, and I don't know if you do that through your legislature or if you do that through the providers, or if you do that, you saw how we're doing that as business owners. A good percentage of us aren't going to offer it, or we're going to have more participation on premiums. But this is going to have to be solved. There are indications that the tariffs are creating a drag on the growth of small business. If you don't think you're in a world economy, like Jim said, you're wrong. Because even as small as anybody is, we are in a position where we're involved in international trade. Any of you gentlemen here wearing a shirt that was manufactured in the United States? Wait, let me tell you, no, you are not. Okay, so that kind of concludes what we have, but I would take whatever questions you might have, and I do think I got us back on time.